A woman named Jeannie Child. She was brutally killed in her South Minneapolis apartment. This was back in 1993.
Now, her family, left with grief, continued to push for answers. And for years, this case sat cold. But a fresh set of eyes and some new technology would bring a big break in this case more than 25 years later. Senior investigative reporter Jennifer Mayerle and photojournalist Grant Verdon dig into the story behind it. Here's part of what you'll see in our latest WCCO original, Footprint to Murder.
Why does this crime scene stand out to you?
There was a bloody footprint. We're not talking shoe print, footprint. In other words, a bare foot had come in contact with her blood, so after she's been injured, and then placed on the floor and left actual identifiable footprints. When I saw that, I mean, that's significant because clearly it wasn't coming from her. She had socks on, and if this is identifiable footprint, just like fingerprints, you could identify what would appear to be the perpetrator. What
was that like discovering that bloody footprint?
It felt like an aha, my gosh, that could be incredible. I wanted our fingerprint expert and photographer to make sure he could photograph those, try to develop them a little bit more with some chemicals, and he took lifts of it. I wanted an experienced fingerprint person to really make sure we didn't lose what the potential value was in that.
The day of the crime, you were thinking, whoever left these bloody footprints could be the killer.
Yeah, I write it in the report. The perpetrator is the most likely person to have left the bloody footprints found at the scene.
And what is that date on the report?
September 17th, 1993. It was just a few months after I wrote. And that's my opinion. It still is.
Wow.
Oh, okay, Jennifer shares more about this documentary with us this morning. I mean, it's a fascinating story here. It's something we've heard about for a long time. Tell us about the doc. How did this come about?
Yeah, it really started with Jeannie Child's family. She is the woman that was murdered in 1993. I got to know them a few years ago. We talked about going more in depth and really sharing her story when the time was right. It was a project that also shared who she was, not just how she died, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, someone people cared about. She loved people and kids and animals and music, and she loved to dance, and she really loved Lionel Richie. And I really felt like I got to know Jeannie through this documentary, through talking with her family, and we kept her in mind throughout this entire project.
How old was she when she died?
Yeah, she was in her 30s. She was 35 years old, and had a lot more life to live, and we hope that this documentary honors her.
So, I mean, clearly, this is a cold case, I mean, so quite some time.
Yeah.
What stood out in all your notes? Are there specific things that stood out? Because this case, I mean, it takes turns and twists everywhere, it feels like.
It absolutely does. I mean, there's so many things that stand out about it. It's a 1993 case, a case that went cold for a long time. As we've mentioned, the family that refused to let their loved one be forgotten. They kept pushing for answers. There's DNA evidence that sat for decades. DNA was new when it was just starting.
Really?
To collect
93?
DNA
Wow.
in 93, in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so it sat for decades not knowing who it belonged to. They couldn't match it to anyone. A new tool called Investigative Forensic Genetic Genealogy. It would help investigators get a break in this case, and that's basically checking the DNA against those commercial sites where people can upload their own DNA to find out about their heritage. And as you heard about that bloody footprint, that could connect the killer to a crime scene. So many different things in this case that really made it fascinating to give a deeper look into.
And Jen, you were talking, the person that we just saw you talk to, he was at the BCA at the time of the crime. You go back and talk to a lot of people who were there in 1993.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things about this is most of the people that we are talking to have never talked before about this case. We talked to, as you saw, Bart Epstein, who was with the BCA, a forensic scientist at the time, who responded to the crime scene. We talked to DNA and footprint experts, and they take us through the case from their view. What did it take for them to take another look at this case? We talked to an FBI special agent who's never spoken about this case before, who helped reopen this case in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And it's just fascinating to talk to these people and really get to know these Minnesotans who had a true dedication to this case and to solving this case and to getting answers for this family.
Yeah, it's just interesting to hear different perspectives, as you mentioned, that we have not heard from before, but also, as you alluded to, the role that technology has played in all of this to helping get this cold case solved.
Yeah, we hear about DNA, right?
Yeah.
That the DNA can help solve these cases years later. And that is something that helped investigators get a break in this case. But the key to this case still is that bloody footprint that we saw and that we learn about. And that is what is so incredibly rare in this case. DNA doesn't have a timestamp on it.
Right.
But a bloody footprint, that had to be someone who was there at the time when Jeannie was killed.
Right, and how long he hid. He hid, just waiting there. All right, well, Jen, we look forward to it. 4 p.m. today, Footprint to Murder debuts on WCCO's Facebook page. You can get there by scanning the QR code on your screen. We also have a special spot on it on our website, WCCO.com/footprint to murder.